All right, guys, episode 7 of Bluster and Blue Jays. It has been a little while, but I have the best reason for it to take some time since I've had my last broadcast. With me here is former catcher for the Jays. Probably one of the most outspoken people you'll meet, but he's a wonderful fucking human being. And I want you guys to say hi to Gregg Zaun. Greg, thanks for being with me, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, buddy. How you been?
Things are good. It's sunny outside. It's no longer fucking snowing, so I'm very happy. So what we're gonna get into here is I want to find out about your time here. Like you've had a pretty storied career. You know, you've won a World Series with Florida. You've played with a bunch of different teams, and even were in the spring training with these fellas. It's my new fitted Expo hat. I'm quite proud of my fitted Expo hat. So with my big fat fucking head. But anyway, so tell me first of all, how did you get to Toronto?
Well, I was in camp with your Expos, and I found myself in a situation, let's just say it was untenable. I ended up getting released the last day of spring training by the Expos. And 3 days later, the Blue Jays called me and said, hey, listen, we don't have anything for you right now, but we've got some at-bats for you at AAA. I hadn't been to AAA in 8 years. We got a young catcher named Guillermo Quiroz. We'd like you to mentor a little bit, but we'll get you some at-bats. You won't catch a whole lot, but you'll get the DH and maybe catch once or twice a week. And I said, okay, fine. Just wanted to stay relevant and wait for my turn. Never expected anything to happen with the Blue Jays. And then Greg Myers rolled his ankle in Minnesota. And 24 hours later, I'm, with the club. We traveled to Chicago, which was my, first place to play as a Blue Jay. And fortunately for me, it was my favorite place to play in the major leagues. And, I always laugh because as soon as they activated me on the roster, I was immediately the guy with the highest lifetime batting average of any active player against the Chicago White Sox. So it worked out really well for me. First hit as a Jay was a home run. First month as a Jay, I hit 400. Kevin Cash, the current manager of the Tampa Bay Rays, was the anointed starter, and I basically took his job. I played so well that Carlos Tosca gave me the starting job, and never really looked back after that.
So you've been in a bunch of different clubhouses, obviously. So I'm always curious about clubhouse culture, especially then to now, that kind of thing. So what was the clubhouse culture in Toronto like compared to other clubhouses that you've been in? Was it better, worse? Was it pretty much the same everywhere you went?
Pretty laid back. Obviously, the media back then was, soft, cream puff. It was an easy place to play. Not a whole lot of expectations, not a whole lot of accountability when you compare it to New York, LA, Chicago, Boston, even Philly.
Yeah.
Nothing. Guys could just play. The clubhouse culture, it was typical. The veteran guys ran the clubhouse. So another thing that happened when I became activated was I had the most service time of anybody on the team. It was a funny story, about Eric Kinski saying, I wasn't really sure about you when I first met you. And I'm like, why? He's like, well, you come into the clubhouse, you take off your shirt, you're talking to everybody kind of like you own the place. And I was like, did you want me to tiptoe around a bunch of guys with way less service time than me? Did you want me to not take off my shirt in a dressing room? Like I've been here 100 times already. How many times you been to Minnesota? How many times you been to Chicago? Like I got 8 years of big league service time at this point, dude. What am I doing tiptoeing around you? And, I basically installed myself as the guy who was going to tell the younger players how to do things. And I was going to police the clubhouse. And, that's what Carlos wanted from me. We had Carlos Delgado, we had, me, we had a couple other guys that had been around a little bit. And, that was our job, was to show the young guys how to do it, how to be big leaguers, the pecking order, how to be respectful of the veteran players. Because, anybody will tell you, getting to the big leagues is a hell of a lot easier than staying in the big leagues. It's tough to get there, but once you get to the show, you're playing against at that point, other 749 best players in the world are either sharing a clubhouse with you or you're playing against them. So it's hard to stay. So it's our job as veteran players to try to truncate the learning curve and show them how to do it so that everybody can live harmoniously in the clubhouse, because it's hard.
Now, you and I we've had discussions before. Now, one person you mentioned to me, like you type of ball player you like, you mentioned to me Aaron Hill specifically.
Yeah.
Now, tell the audience what is it about Aaron Hill that you liked as a ball player?
Well, when he got to the big leagues, he was a grinder, and he was like, granted, he was a first round pick, but Aaron had this air about him, grinder, hard worker. He wasn't a prima donna. He wasn't a pretty boy. He wasn't a real big guy either. It wasn't like he was A-Rod or some 6'4" Adonis. He was a short little guy. I used to call him the Penguin because he reminded me of Ron Say. And short, stocky, just infielder running around hustling. And I told him, I kind of took him under my wing when he first got there. I said, look, I know you're going to gravitate towards certain guys, but be mindful of who you're hanging out with. Be mindful of who you're emulating, and also keep in mind, there's some star players in this clubhouse that don't work very hard because they don't have to. They've never had to. It's kind of like the really gorgeous girl that we all know that really never had to cultivate certain parts of her personality because she's never heard the word no. Well, that's what these guys are. They're pretty. They look good in the uniform. They can't miss. They're so talented that even if they don't work, they're gonna out athlete people. And I told Aaron, I said, you're not that guy. So be mindful of who you're emulating. And he took it to heart. He was a good kid.
It was from you can kind of tell again watching these guys play. Like I always use John McDonald as a great example of somebody like that who just took every ounce of talent and squeezed it out of himself to be able to push himself to a decent, pretty decent, major league utility type guy. And what is one thing that, because I'm trying to compare different eras of Blue Jay stuff here, right? So that Carlos Tosca era was interesting. The ownership situation was definitely a little bit strange. So did you find things a little bit weird? Because I think you were there during the Interbrew times, weren't you?
Yeah, Carlos was there, and then John Gibbons came in when they fired him. Looking back on that situation, that was inevitable. I mean, J.P. Ricciardi, John Gibbons, they were Mets guys from their minor years. Yeah. You knew that was going to happen. I mean, it was one of those things. But I mean, to me, we had no chance to get at that point. We had no chance to get out of the American League East. The Yankees were about as good as it gets. Boston was getting better. They obviously had, 2004, 2005. That was crazy times in the American League East. And then it was just one of those things where, even though we were in a major city, it felt like a small market ball club. Canada, the Jays are earning in Canadian, paying in U.S. dollars. Nobody wants to play them unless it's their only choice. The minor league system at that point was an absolute joke. They weren't, outside of Vernon Wells and, Roy Halladay, they hadn't really done anything. They hadn't really created or developed any impact players. So there was nothing in the farm system to trade away to bring in a free agent to help at the deadline. In fact, we were the opposite. We were the guys trading Carlos Delgados and, Roy Halladay's instead of the other way around.
Now, with that,
it was an interesting thing. For me, it was just an opportunity to play every day, which is what I had been craving. I got a mini chance in Florida in '98, and I shit all over myself. Mentally, I wasn't ready to handle it. Jim Leland knew it. I didn't. I thought, okay, I could do this, but no. So when I finally got the opportunity in Toronto to play every day, I was ready mentally and physically, except unfortunately I'd had a couple of arm surgeries that didn't allow me to throw the way I did when I was younger. But I came into myself as a game caller, as a hitter, as a field general, so to speak. So, couldn't have been a better opportunity for me than,
I
Carlos
think you're
Tosca.
you're probably arguably one of the best hitting catchers, if not the best hitting catcher we've had in the team ever. Like I remember watching Ernie Whitt and Buck. They hit their 240s and got their hits here and there. I've watched Pat Borders to go through his stuff and all these other guys. You just seem to be the one that you're the one that could really hit. Everybody else had, they had their moments, but you just hit, and I fucking loved it. That's what people loved watching about you, and your defense was pretty good too, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't throw. By the time I got to the Jays, I'd had 3 arm surgeries. It was not good.
Yeah,
At one point, that was a weapon for me. That was one of the reasons I got drafted. But over time, I became a serviceable major league hitter. I was a good run producer when I got a chance. I mean, I had 1 year. Nobody expected it. I drove in 70 runs for the Jays, and at the end of
and,
my career, I started hitting double-digit homers. But I was always good
and you were a
when
switch
counted.
hitter too. I think you'll forget
Yeah,
that you were a
yeah,
switch hitter too, which is
yeah,
something rare to
yeah.
find as
John
well.
Gibbons forgot that a lot. He forgot that I could hit right-handed as well.
Why did he
So
just think you hit better left-handed? Is that why?
everybody did. What people don't realize is I had legitimate power right-handed when I was young, but over time, the home runs weren't coming, and I was only hitting left-handed, and then that swing got ugly. My right-hand swing got ugly. My left hip got hurt, it got tight. I couldn't rotate anymore, so it was a scramble and a battle every time I went out there. And I don't blame them for wanting me to be at the plate left-handed, but you can't expect a guy to do much against left-handed bullpen
Yeah.
guys when you're not giving them the cream puff left-handed starter once in a while. They always started me against the elite guys. So I never got I rarely got to start against the Jamie Warriors.
So out of your teammates you have for the few years there, do you think is there anybody that exceeded your expectations when you first saw them and thought they were way better than you thought they were going to be?
Well, Jose Bautista, he
Yeah.
was there my last year. He came
Wasn't he?
in, and I remember seeing him, and I remember looking at him. I'm like, yeah, he's got a little pop. I mean, this I don't even remember what we dealt away to get him, or did we even get anything?
We dealt
For Jose
away
Bautista.
a catcher. I can't remember what his name was. It was a catcher we sent to Pittsburgh. He came
Yeah,
here and he was 29, I think, when he got here too, wasn't he? Like he was older too. Like I know he didn't discover his thing until either 27 or 29. I can't remember the exact age, but
yeah. No, he was a guy that you're sitting there going, this guy's got some pop. What's the deal? I think he was still playing a little third base.
yep.
Uh,
Yeah, he was.
yeah, and then fast forward to a couple years later, and I'm like, "Geez, Louise!" I mean, and that's Cito right there. Cito was a great hitting coach,
Yeah,
and he unlocked a bunch of guys, and he certainly unlocked Jose. Probably
absolutely.
unlocked Edwin Encarnacion as well.
Yeah.
Um, and you can't deny Cito as a hitting coach. There's no way you can. He taught me some stuff. Hell, I learned how to hit a breaking ball from him. Just having and he probably didn't even know he was telling me about it, but he was
No.
saying some stuff. And then couple that with a conversation I had with Bill Miller about Mariano Rivera, and all of a sudden, my last couple of years, I was actually starting to hit the breaking ball okay. Uh, so yeah, it's Jose Bautista is probably the one guy where you're just like, and he, honestly, stories like his
Hmm.
inspire me as a coach because I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I've trial and errored, I've succeeded and failed. Um, I have a pretty good understanding of how to do it a bunch of different ways. Man, if I can just communicate to this kid who has similar athletic ability, maybe
Hmm.
I can unlock this kid. Maybe I can turn this kid into a superstar and give him an opportunity at the kind of success that Jose had for, a handful of years. So it's really guys like that that inspire me to keep going as a coach because you're thinking, well, he had the physical talent the whole time. It was just somebody needed to get to him. The
Yeah.
light bulb had to come on. And when you're a coach, you crave those light bulb moments. That's what you're looking for.
And those kids have to be hard workers too. They're not just like they're trying to get better. They're
Yeah,
not just that was the thing. Like, but
yeah,
because I mean, they always say your prime years are what 27, 28 in any sport. Like your peak physical condition is going to be that. So for him to hit that after that, after that time frame, and to do it for 10 more years, yeah, it definitely blew me away. But it's funny
Yeah.
how he fell off
Well,
the cliff and couldn't get a job after that. Like he was just done. Once they let him go, you never saw him again.
right, and he probably didn't want to. He was probably done. You know,
Well,
I
he
mean, when
tried
you
for
make
another
all that
year.
money, you make a pile of money, and you're physically unable. Like I could, if I had decided, if I knew then what I know now about the year I retired, like I was
Mhm.
mentally done. Like I was cooked. I had gone through some shit the year before with the arm reconstruction. Mentally, I was beat up. My body could have handled it for another 4 or 5 years. I could have played into my mid 40s.
Mhm.
Um, But mentally, I was done. I can guarantee Jose probably had enough mentally. He was just like, fuck
Yeah.
this. I don't want to get ready for a season. I don't want to deal with the video, the scouting. It's a grind. People you think you just show up and change your clothes and go out there and have fun playing ball. Not the
No.
good ones. If you want to be
106,
good at this game, it's a freaking 12-hour a day job. And it
162
never
games. Jesus.
leaves you, man. I know, but mentally you're never off. Like
Yeah.
I'm 54 years old and I'm just now learning how to walk away from the ballpark and shut it down, shut it off. Like I'm right now, I'm in Mexico and I'm the hitting coach and we're struggling to score runs. We're not swinging the bat good in RBI situations, but I'm not going to go home and beat myself up over it. I know that I did everything I could to prepare those kids to go out there and do it. I
Mhm.
can't hit for them. I can't swing
Yeah.
the bat for them. So mentally,
Yeah.
I have a right to a quality of life as well. So I'm going to come home and I might think of it. Okay, what can I do tomorrow to try to unlock them, try to turn this light bulb on, try to get them to relax and just go out there and be athletic.
Mhm.
And then
And I
once I'm
think,
done with it, I'm done with it.
is
As
that
soon as
one of
I
the
turn
biggest
Netflix on, I'm done.
when the hitters, that's one thing I think of with a lot of hitters, especially in baseball. I don't think a lot of people understand how much different baseball is from the other sports in terms of the mental aspect, like you're talking about. Like you want to go up to the plate not thinking, like you have a plan, but you don't have a plan. Like you're up there and just trying to be open to what's coming to you, as opposed to, you know, being totally like set into what you want to do. Um, it's not like that in other sports. In baseball, you have so much time to think about everything. Like basketball, you're on the court and you're running. Hockey, you're all over the place, right? You're doing things as quickly as you possibly can, making split second decisions, and you still make those in baseball. But then you got the times when you're sitting there thinking about everything. And for me, that was
Yeah.
when I played ball. That was my hardest part. Was just sitting there, just like I remember there's one stretch I went like 0 for 30. It was brutal. And I just sat there after every bat, just sat there thinking the whole game about what am I doing wrong, and it affected everything else. To be able to be successful for 160 games, um, I think takes more mental acuity than most other sports. Personally, do you think the same thing?
Yeah. Well, for sure. If you're mentally weak in baseball, you're not going to be successful, especially as a hitter. You
Yeah.
better learn how to deal with failure. The best hitters in the world fail 7 times out of 10. We had a kid the other day. We were talking around the cage, and he's like, "Oh, I'm just so frustrated. I barreled up, a bunch of balls the last couple of games, and I got nothing to show for it." And I'm like, "Yeah, you did."
Yeah.
I
You
go,
barreled the
"You did
ball.
what?" I go, "You hit the ball hard. You had." See, I'm trying to convince these guys because I hit the ball hard all the time, and I was only a 250 hitter. I didn't
Hmm.
have enough power to hit it over their head in the middle of the field or to the opposite field. And we played against some pretty good pitchers that could just feed you to the defense. I said, "You better get used to it, dude. Um, good hitters, they hit the ball hard 6, 7 times out of 10.
Hmm.
And if you're a 300 hitter, that means 3 or 4 of them are getting caught. So understand this: when you hit a ball 95 miles an hour or harder in the game of baseball, you won. The battle was with you and the pitcher. The
Yeah.
battle's not with you and the other 8 guys on the field that are trying to stop you from getting hit. You won that one-on-one battle. You hit a ball 95 miles an hour plus, which is, I guess, MLB's definition of a hard hit ball.
Yeah. I mean,
So
I think,
if
yeah.
you did that, then you got no control over what happens after it comes off the barrel. And that's one thing nowadays that they keep track of that they didn't keep track of when I was playing. Like, holy crap, I wonder what my hard hit ball average
Oh
would have
my
been. It would have
God.
been off the charts. But
There's too much. There's
I
just too
didn't hit.
much.
I hit 250. So, when a guy says to me, "Well, I didn't have nothing to show for it," I'm like, "You won the battle 3 times last night. You didn't get any hits, but you won the battle."
Yeah. You're
And
not
I keep
grounding
telling
out.
them, even a ground
Yeah.
out, if it's a 95 mile an hour ground ball, it's still a hard hit ball.
Yeah.
And it's a hell of a lot easier to get a hit that way than it is to pop it up. I mean, hell, you could exit velocity the damn thing to dead center field and hit it 402. But if the fence is 405, it's a friggin' out.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
keep telling these kids, I'm like, your hits are over here. They're not over there. You're not strong enough to do it over here. Here are your hits. So when you're large and in charge, why are you hitting freaking deep fly balls opposite field? Yeah, you barreled it. You hit the hell out of it. But it's an out. If you had
Yep.
pulled that ball, you would have hit it out of the ballpark, or even better in a gap double. It's just
Right.
they don't understand. Mentally weak players don't survive. They don't
Yep.
survive in this game. You better be able to do it mentally.
And that's good. I'm glad they have performance coaches and stuff to help guys kind of talk like that and whatever. But I still think the analytics have kind of gone a little bit bonkers to me. Every time you talk to a Blue Jay fan online these days, they're always bringing up these analytics of why somebody's doing something wrong. Like people,
Right.
for example, right now are all over Vladdy because he's hit one home run. Santander's hit one home run, and they're like, "See, you're paying $500 million one home run and blah blah blah." And I don't know how many times every season I have to have these conversations with people saying like, a guy is not going to hit all the time. There's a reason why a 300 hitter is one of the top hitters in baseball. I said, it's a game of failure. It's a game of how being able to deal with failure. Just because, like last year, like you want to say Delgado, but Vladdy hit like 3 or 4 home runs in April and then went off for the rest of the year. Went off, right? Santander, same thing. Slow starter, but he went off 44 home runs by the end of the year. But all these Jays fans, I don't remember it being like this before. Like when you played,
It was.
where they just think
You can have social media, dude.
Yeah, I just can't.
Sorry to interrupt you. The analytics, it gives people who never played the game that don't know fucking shit about baseball an opportunity to get online and have their voices heard and feel important when they don't know dick about the game.
Yep.
You know what? Vladdy's a slow starter with regard to power. I was just about to say it before you did. Remember last year when that guy, started off with very few bombs and then went crazy?
Yeah.
Here's something to understand in the game of baseball. You get these idiots want to talk about, well, we just paid him $500 million. You paid him $500 million for what he's already done, not what he's going to do.
Yep.
You paid for what he's done, not what he's going to do. I'll say it again. You paid for what he's done, not what he's going to do. Get over it. Okay? Get the fuck over it. It's not.
I know they're trying to change that now with the younger players. They're signing younger players to longer like Jackson Merrill signed for like 11 years, like 280. And I know in retro, like if he keeps up the pace he's going, highly underpaid, right?
He is, but he's also getting the money in his pocket, Jeff, quicker, which gives him the opportunity to grow it exponentially.
And it's like I know we had this conversation about Vladdy last time. Is that he wasn't consistent. Like before the contract was signed, I was always saying like he had 2021 awesome, 2024 awesome, 22 and 23 pretty good, but there was no consistency. So people wanted to pay him, like, who were saying, you got to give him what you gave Juan Soto and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, you don't, because he hasn't proven that he can do it yet. But they gave him the money now because they realized, I think they realized how much money, I think Ed Rogers realized how much money he'll make with him being on the team anyway. Like, it was all about Ed Rogers, whether he was going to give him the money or not. And he didn't. Even Ed Rogers, for the first time ever, was at a press conference with a player. And I think that was the Jays statement to say, like, we are now the Yankees, the Mets, the Dodgers. We're going to fucking spend money now. Like, we're not going to be, nickel and diming like they used to do. Like when you were playing, like we should never have lost Delgado or Halladay. I know part of the reason Halladay left was because he wanted to win, right? But we weren't winning because we weren't spending money and we weren't drafting properly. Like, it's simple stuff like that,
player
right?
Development in Toronto has been a disaster for 20 years.
It's still
20-year period.
I mean,
I'm going to tell you right now, the only formula they have, because they have Vladdy under control. You're not going to bring in a top-level free agent unless you overpay for him. I applaud them for getting creative with signing bonus structure of his contract, because the one of the biggest problems most people have with Toronto is the taxes and the cost of living.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to buy a house up there.
Oh God, no.
So
not right now.
They got to get creative with the money. So now you're going to see bunch of clubs looking for guys who are domiciled in Florida, Texas, Nevada. You know, if you're not already as a Major League Baseball player, you're a knucklehead. Like, I laughed at half of my buddies who are like, "Oh, yeah, I still live in California." You're an idiot.
Is
You're
Arizona
a
the
stinking
same as
idiot.
Florida, or is Arizona more California? Because there's a lot of players living in Arizona I found recently too.
Oh, Arizona's crazy expensive, but California is probably still one of the most expensive. Like, I think
Oh yeah,
if
yeah,
you're a California guy, if you're domiciled in California, by the time you get down, you're looking at about 51% of your income to the state and federal.
yeah.
You know, now, we can all afford really good accountants, but not that good.
No kidding. I mean, do you think does Toronto being a foreign city do you think that ever really was a thing for? I think back in the day, like in the 80s and maybe early 90s, it kind of was a thing until they started signing like, Winfield, Molitor, Morris, those kind of guys. But was being a foreign country a big problem for a lot of guys, do you think? Even
Yeah,
though is it really that foreign?
it's a big deal. I mean, ask yourself this: how many of those guys bought houses in Toronto and stayed there?
Yeah. Yeah.
None. Almost all the guys. You look at all my former teammates.
Mm-hmm.
I look at all those guys. Even Corey Koski. He's Canadian. He's from Manitoba. All he did was move about 300 miles south of where he was born to Minnesota. They end up playing. They end up living where they play.
Canadian golfers are the same. Any Canadian athlete's the same way. Canadian golfers, they all, partially because they can practice year round, but yeah, they all leave the country. All the athletes leave the country if they can.
They
That's
leave
why
the
Gretzky's down there.
country. That American players aren't going to buy a home in Canada. I'm the only knucklehead that owns property up there.
Oh, they were something 20 years, maybe.
I got a Canadian ex-wife and a kid and a half Canadian kid. So, it's like whatever. But nobody's going to do that. That's a big problem. That's why the formula for them is always going to be your core players have to be grown within the organization, and you better develop a ton of good players so that you can trade away two guys every single year to bring in a free agent if you need help at the deadline. If you don't do that, you're not going to win. They're not going to be able to beat Baltimore, Yankees.
Well, I was going to say there's one point there that I remember there were a few years there where there were more J draft picks in the majors than any other team, but they were all like utility dudes. There was no like star player guys coming out from the system. Like we had a lot of guys that were playing, but they weren't starters. And that seems to be the way their organization's always been. Like I'm looking at these guys they're bringing up now. Alan Roden, Addison Barger, not Ernie Clement because he came from somewhere else, but David Schneider, all these guys they brought up to try just aren't quite there. They're good as a utility guy, but there's no starters. The only starter I can see is like a Will Wagner, who we got from Houston. The starters are guys we traded for. There's no, like the homegrown talent, pitching wise, all got hurt and they're all recovering now. I think they have a decent lower like Dunedin, and Vancouver. I think they're doing all right. We just don't have that bridge gap between, from A ball to the majors. We just got a lot of 4A guys, is what I would say.
Right. Right. When was the last time you saw the Jays have a top level shortstop, like a Nomar, like a Jeter, like an A-Rod?
Tony.
I can't remember one.
Tony Fernandez. That's
not what we're talking. We're talking about. Exactly. He was a defensive wizard on AstroTurf.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. We've never really. I don't think we've ever really had a shortstop like that. To be honest with you, I just don't think we have. Alex Gonzalez had the
center fielder.
Vernon. Lloyd Mosby. Lloyd Mosby was pretty good. He did really. Yeah, he was a hell of a player back in the 80s. Like him. They called the best outfield in baseball for a while was George Bell, Jesse Barfield, Lloyd Mosby, because Bell was the
because they all raked or because they all could throw and run and hit.
It was different. Bell could rake, but he couldn't field to save his life. Yep. Barfield could hit for power, not so much for average as Bell did, but he had a cannon of an arm, played great outfield. Mosby was really fast, stole bases, covered great outfield, and he was a 280, 290 kind of hitter. So they kind of had a little bit of everything. I think that's why they kind of like they were on the cover of Sports Illustrated, the three of those guys,
Yeah.
Or guys like,
what about second base? What about catcher? Have they developed an all-star catcher, like a legitimate perennial all-star catcher? Nope.
The closest would have been Borders, I think. I mean, Witt, kind of, because back in the 80s, and catching really wasn't much for hitting anyway, right? And Ernie was a decent receiver, and he still likes being in Canada. He's still coaching Team Canada, for Christ's sake. I can't believe
I love Big Ernie. He's one of my favorite human beings ever. He's one of my favorite coaches ever. But we're not talking about they haven't developed a Pudge, they haven't developed a Yachty, they don't. My point is this. You got to be strong up the middle. You got to have legit behind the dish. And we're not talking about 80 standards. Everybody has to hit now. Everybody. Okay? It's just part of the game. So you got to have a catcher that's sub 1-2 to second base, can be at least an average for average, whatever the league average is now.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking for 265 or better, 15 home runs or better, 60 to 75 ribbies, and a defensive You got to be able to do all that shit.
Yeah.
Center fielder's got to be he's got to be an all-star. Shortstop's got to be an all-star. Second baseman can be a little bit of this, a little bit of that, or whatever, a mix of something in there. The point that I'm making is they have not. Vladdy is an impact player. Bo at times is an impact player. But if you look at Bo and you compare him to the other shortstops in baseball, he's second tier, in my opinion.
Yeah, like he's hitting 3
hits.
Yeah. But his OPS is still in his 700s. Like he maybe 810 is about as high as he gets. Like he doesn't have a lot of like extra power. But he hits. I like if he hits opposite field. I kind of like that aspect of it because he just kind of goes with the ball. So, but he's never going to be a 20 home run guy. He's just not.
Nope. And what's his on base percentage? Is his on base percentage even close to approaching 400?
If he hits 330 on base percentage, I'd be
330 is not even. That's not even in the realm of like respectable for an on base percentage. So
and he's leading off right now.
Yeah, if you're on your OBP for a leadoff hitter should be 375 or better, in my opinion.
It's one thing I find. But just the way hitters are hitting these days, I don't like on base percentages are kind of low in general because like it's the three the three outcomes, right? Strikeout, home run, or a walk, and that's it.
So if he's not going to be an OBP guy, you better hit the ball out of the ballpark. 10's not good enough. Jeff, that the average home run output for a guy with 600 plate appearances, a guy like Bo Bichette, if he's healthy, he's going to get 600 plate appearances.
Mm-hmm.
The average home run output for a guy with 600 plate appearances in the big leagues now is 20 plus.
He's done it, but he's only done it once.
The 20 used to be a guy that had, he borderline got popped. 30 was, this guy's a power hitter.
Yeah.
Now 30's a joke. With the balls being the way they are, you got hobbits like Altuve going 375 oppo, playing in a bandbox ballpark like Houston, hitting 30 a year.
I hate that ballpark. I really do.
I didn't like playing there either.
And the whole idea that Taj Hill or Tal Hill they had there was got to be the dumbest idea I've ever fucking seen. Like that to me, it looked like an injury waiting to happen. That's what it looked like.
The quintessential moment for me on that was Lance Berkman. But anyways, we digress. Let's.
Okay. So one last question. I'll let you go because it's getting late and I gotta meet with an old friend apparently. So what is it about Toronto that you liked when you were here? Why did you like being in Toronto? What is it about the city that you liked? What was a good thing about it back then?
It was a big city with a small town feel. The people in Toronto made me love it. It had a little bit of a European flavor to it. The restaurants were great. The shopping was great. The people were great. And up until around when Trudeau took over as prime minister, it was literally my favorite place on earth. Now you couldn't pay me to go there. It's a disaster. It's a dumpster fire.
Well,
that's sad because I live in Canada. I live in British Columbia. I feel bad for my Canadian friends.
Mm-hmm.
dealing with what they're dealing with right now. As you can tell, I'm a pretty opinionated guy, so politics are kind of in my wheelhouse. I'd love to see that city get back to being the Toronto that I grew up loving and knowing.
I
Whether
think
that's
it
possible,
will.
I don't know.
I think it will, because the big thing with Toronto I find right now, it's in a transition phase right now. Like there's so much construction of things being built, the rebuilding of the harbor front and Ontario Place, and every street's got construct like then the guard, like everything is being built right now, and it sucks.
Yeah.
Like it really does.
Yeah.
But once it's done, I think you have a chance of building into a great city again. I think.
Yeah,
But
the
I won't
people
be here
used
to
to be
see it.
so nice.
They're
They used to
not.
be
They're
so
not
nice.
anymore.
I just don't get that feeling anymore, Jeff.
They're not. Like when I came down to Toronto in '95, when I went, '92, I went to Ryerson, which is now Toronto Metropolitan University. I don't know if you heard that. Stupidest name for a university I've ever heard. It sounds like a Netflix special.
Let me guess. Somebody named Ryerson did something
Ryerson,
non-woke back in the
Egerton
day.
Ryerson was one of the main facilitators of the chartered schools and murdered a bunch of Indigenous kids. That's why. But
allegedly murdered a bunch of Indigenous kids? Because I just saw something online about how they thought they were mass graves, but they weren't mass graves.
He was a very bad person. Like so bad that people ripped his statue down. Like literally. Like he wasn't a good person. But I mean, the guy with the last name Dundas, he also wasn't a good person. Like on it, like all these names of people, like if you're talking about today, the way people feel about things today, everybody who has a street named after them back then was probably a bad person. For whatever reason, right? They were they were racist, or they were like whatever the thing was. They're just not good people, right? Like they renamed Dundas Square a different name, but whatever. That's just the way it's kind of gone around here. It just everything's kind of become muted, kind of like you can walk around the city, like nobody looks at you. Nobody. I don't just blame certain things. I blame technology. Like I think they should have squares on the side of sidewalks so you can stand there and use your fucking phone and get the fuck out of my way. You're in my way. Like I'm the guy at the shopping mall. If there's a family of 5 who are like spread across like this, I'm the guy behind the father, like towering over him, just standing and walking right behind him till they realize that I'm there and let me pass. Because I like to be very intimidating at my size. I'm not a fighter, but I sure as hell intimidate the shit out of people.
Good thing I'm not 6'5", because I'd be probably scarier than I am to some people are already.
I've gotten to the point where
around at 225.
You'll know this because you've been like this more than I have. But I've realized recently, last 5 years, I don't fucking care what anybody says. And if I think somebody needs to be told they're being a dumbass, I'm going to tell them they're being a dumbass. I have no problem with it. Especially the service, because I was in the service industry for a long time. And when I see people treating service industry people like garbage, oh man, it sets a fire under my ass because I've dealt with those people so many times.
I was bartending this winter, and I agree with you. But I tend not to get the abuse that other people get. But at the end of the day,
yeah, me too.
Yeah, let's be honest, man. There really is not a whole lot of service going on in the service industry these days. It's almost a joke. Well, you're expected to tip 20%, and you don't get good service for that.
No, I don't agree with that at all. Like it's funny because I left the country, right, when you're being tipped 15%. I came back to Canada a couple of years later. It was like 18%. Then a year 20%. Like what the? No, coming from I managed pubs. Like I ran multi-million-dollar pubs myself. I know what I'm. Oh yeah, like Murphy's Law down the beach. I ran that place for a while.
Yeah.
Foggy Dew down on King West. This company called Fab Concept I worked for. They're fantastic, and they owned a lot of pubs. I also worked for the Oliver Bonacini Group for a while. Like I know how these people operate. I was learning a lot of things. My disability got me from doing them anymore. Got me fired, actually.
They're good company then, because it's not been my experience. I'm finding that service industry people tend to be a little disgruntled these days, and I have no choice but to tip well because people know me. So if I tip poorly, if I tip poorly for getting poor service, somebody puts it on the internet.
Yeah, that's true. And and that's the thing. That's why it just sucks. Or the fact that everybody wants to be tipped now. Like I went, where was I? Was at? It wasn't
Yeah.
even it wasn't even like a
Starbucks.
food store.
Or
Yeah, but it wasn't even that. I was at no, Lids. I was at a Lids
right?
store buying this.
Yeah.
And I think he came up saying, "Oh, you want to tip 10%?" Like,
No.
well,
For what?
like I understand people's. I wish and it's going to happen. You're going to see it happening more now. You're going to go back to the European style of doing things in the way in that it's all built into the price. That's you're going to start seeing that now more often than not, especially up here, because people are tired of paying 25%, thinking they're supplementing people's income. It's like we're just going to build it into the price, and that's going to start happening more now, which is the way it should have been in the first place. Like,
Yeah,
there's no reason that I should be supplementing income for somebody else because the owner won't pay them the money, and that's a lot of it. What happens up here? So, but down in the States, service industry is getting killed right now, like hospitality in general, because nobody's traveling to America now. Nobody. Like Canadians have dropped off 70% from going down to the States. It'll get over, but right now, until this whole tariff thing changes, they're not going to go down there. And until he stops threatening to annex Canada, no one's going down there. It's just what's happening. And
it's so funny that people are like all wound up about it. The only people in Canada that want to be annexed are the Albertans.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, we all know why he wants it. He wants us because he wants our resources, and also because the North has melted, and now you can get ships going through the northern areas. So the Chinese are kind of circumventing around the northern area, and that's why Trump wants Greenland and all that kind of stuff, because with global warming melting the ice caps, there's now a whole new area to get through the world right on top that wasn't there before.
Oh God!
And he wants our natural resources. He wants our nickel.
Well, that makes sense. But yeah, we're going down a bunch of rabbit holes now.
We'll have a conversation about that later. But I'm gonna let you go on that one.
Yeah, I'm not going to go there.
I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'd like to have you on again sometime in the future. We'll talk about some more things because I am going to have another podcast that's not baseball related, and we can talk about more other things on that. Because I'd love to hear your opinions on some things.
Yeah, I'm not sure anybody else wants it.
Well, we'll make them hear them. Like I said, I've got dozens of subscribers, so the dozen people are really going to get on this right now. But
no. I'll probably say something stupid and it'll go viral, so then there'll be a whole bunch more attention.
Nah, you got me as your stopgap measure just to make sure that shit don't happen. All right, Greg. Thanks again, buddy. I really appreciate it. All the best to your team down there.
Thank you.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Talk to you soon.
Cheers.